who are supporting people with other ailments. And even though I work for the Alzheimer's Association, and some of the information and tips that I will give is specifically to those who are caring for someone with dementia or Alzheimer's, a lot of this information is relevant to everyone who's providing support to other people. I know some of this information is relevant to me as I provide caregiving to my children, or I think of other family and friends that I know who have loved ones with MS or cancer. And again, some of these things translate for them as well. So keep that in mind. Just to share a quick figure, just because, again, I work with the Alzheimer's Association. Currently, in just the United States, there are 16 million Americans providing unpaid care for those with Alzheimer's disease or related dementia. And if we were to add up all of those hours, it really would add up to 18.6 billion hours. And if we actually cut a paycheck to all those folks, it would be worth $244 billion. So this is why we spend so much time making sure that we take care of the caregivers, because there's a lot of them. And it's a huge misconception to believe that most people with dementia or Alzheimer's live in long-term care facilities, when a large portion of them actually do live in the community and rely on their friends and family to support them. And just reason why, again, to highlight just a quick few statistics, 59% of caregivers rate the emotional stress of providing care as high or very high. Those who are caring for somebody with dementia and Alzheimer's, it's usually a bit more, a higher level than those who are caring for people with other ailments. 40% of dementia caregivers suffer from depression and emotional stress themselves. 72% of family caregivers say that they experience relief when the person dies. And a lot of people think that and feel that, but they're not willing to say it out loud. And I like to throw that one in there so that people recognize that that is a common belief. Because when people experience that relief, their immediate reaction is to feel guilt. But knowing and recognizing that you're not the only one, and that is actually very common, I often find is helpful. And one study actually found that, caregiver stress did not actually go down when the person's loved one moved into a long-term care facility, because now especially during COVID, when we're unable to provide those visits that we may have been able to provide prior to COVID. So things that we may stress about, is our loved one being well cared for? Are they making sure that they're clean? Are they making sure that they're getting all their medications and they're eating? And are they having social interactions? And, I had one caregiver say, will my loved one even remember who I am? Because it's been such a long time since I've been able to visit them. So these are all common stresses, and it doesn't change whether our loved one lives in our home or in a long-term care facility. And when we look at some of the statistics, again, that 75% of caregivers are somewhat concerned to very concerned about maintaining their own health since becoming a caregiver. And what I have found in my 15 years working for the Alzheimer's Association is that often caregivers will actually delay or cancel their own physician or doctor's appointments or routine visits in order to provide their care for their loved one. And because of that and the ongoing stress, often we're seeing that this increases or worsens their healthcare issues. Often many caregivers are also older, so they will develop, many caregivers have other chronic health issues that they're coping with on their own, plus with the added stress. So let's identify what caregiver stress is again. So again, we're all on the same page. And honestly, it's a reality for many caregivers. Many caregivers are overwhelmed and stressed, thinking about how they're going to get through the day and everything on their to-do list. Because caregiving takes a lot of time and effort. And often what happens is that especially with a progressive disease like dementia or Alzheimer's disease, we will often see that the person will gradually decline. So the caregiver is slowly taking on more and more responsibility, and they really are not always aware of what they're taking on. They struggle to balance their caregiving responsibilities along with everything else that they may do. A lot of caregivers still work outside of the home. They also have household responsibilities. And just speaking for myself as, again, a mother of 5-year-old twins who's working from home and trying to manage all of the household responsibilities by providing the care and, virtual schooling and work and all of those things, it's often a struggle to balance and juggle all of those things. And if stress goes on for extensive period of time, often will lead to caregiver burnout and it will result in a lot of other health problems for the caregiver. And so much so that statistically, 18% of caregivers for those with dementia or Alzheimer's disease actually pass before the person with dementia. I know that in my 15 years, I've lost count of how many caregivers have passed before the person with the disease. That's how often I've seen it happen. Besides the ultimate, the caregiver passing, I've also noticed caregivers that have developed cancer or had strokes or heart attacks, so many different things, just because they're completely burned out. And then once they start, it's kind of like a hamster wheel. That's how I look at it, is this wheel. We continue to go round and round because caregivers, then they feel guilty that they're not doing enough. They feel frustrated they can't accomplish everything. And they might get angry at themselves, the situation, and often even the person that they're providing care for. So, what are some of those risk factors for caregivers to develop stress? So, we find that those who actually have the person with dementia living with them, or the person they're providing care that lives with them, they're at a higher risk, just because, our caregiving duties often start from the moment we open our eyes until the time we go to bed. And often, as a disease like dementia progresses, the person may be up at various hours throughout the night, which often will interrupt the caregiver's sleep as well. Social isolation. I think everyone's coping with that right now during COVID, and just not having those outlets to be able to vent and commiserate with our friends and family. Financial difficulties, especially again during COVID, and even prior to COVID, some caregivers work outside of the home, and many caregivers have had to leave their jobs or outside work in order to provide the care and support that their loved one needs. So often financial stresses just increases the caregiver stress, and they may not have the financial ability to hire outside assistance. So that often increases the stress for the caregiver. Those high numbers of hours spent. So even if our loved one doesn't live with us and we're, having to drive across town, or, even the caregivers who have to travel a long distance to provide support for someone, those hours really add up. And again, when we're trying to balance other responsibilities and duties, often we just become overwhelmed. And maybe we've lack coping skills, or really haven't tapped into coping skills we've had earlier in life and dealt with other situations, or perhaps they're not the best coping mechanisms. So we look for substances or other things to help us as an outlet. Or, for some people, the stress comes from that they feel as though they have no choice or a lack of choice in regards to their caregiving responsibility, that there's no one else that can actually step up and provide the support that their loved one needs. And that can be an added stress. So these tips here, these caregiver stress facts, I pulled from the Mayo Clinic. So there's additional information on their website as well. We threw in this little cute picture because, am I suffering from caregiver stress? I think this is great because, those stress balls, I think that's funny because that one's rather big. And, when we're overwhelmed and stressed, we think, does the stress ball come any bigger, any larger that could help us? So just to kind of walk through the 10 signs of caregiver stress. So number one, sign would be denial. And that could be denial about your loved one's diagnosis, or the fact that you're stressed or you're overwhelmed, denial about the situation and that it may progress, or denial that you're unable to do everything by yourself. Me personally, I don't like asking for help, and I'm sure there's others out there like me. So you're in denial that you need any support to begin with. Anger, number two. And again, it could be anger about our life situation, or all of the losses, or all of the things that we had to give up because of our caregiving responsibility. And we may be angry at other people, or other family members or other caregivers involved, just because we may feel that they're not necessarily doing what we think they should be doing. So sometimes there's that underlying anger as a sign of really that we're stressed. Social withdrawal. And I'm not referring to social withdrawal due to COVID. I'm referring to social withdrawal that, we're overwhelmed and stressed, and things that we've always found to refill our cup, and things that we want to participate in, and, conversations, even if it's, we hear all of our friends are getting together for a social distance coffee hour, and we just don't feel like participating, because how could we possibly go and have fun and connect with others when we're just so overwhelmed with our current situation? Anxiety about, what the future will hold, or anxiety about being able to complete everything on our to-do list for the day. That's a sign of stress. And depression, number five. And, I'm not just talking about being sad, but, clinical depression that have this hopelessness that lasts longer than 2 weeks. And it's this ongoing, that we feel like we really don't have any options. Number six is exhaustion. When we stop and think about everything that we need to accomplish, and we're just overwhelmed and completely physically, emotionally tapped out, and just don't feel like we are able to go on. And then the flip side of that, there's a lot of us that are sleeplessness. I know when I'm overwhelmed or stressed, it keeps me up at night, running through my to-do list and trying to figure out a plan. Or, even if I've fallen asleep, I'll wake up in the middle of the night, and trying to figure out a plan and how I'm going to be able to accomplish things. And when we're overwhelmed and stressed, we're usually irritable and have a short fuse, with our friends, our loved ones. And, we're just not as friendly and loving and outgoing as we would like to be. Lack of concentration, number nine, where we're not really able to focus and really tackle tasks just because we're not able to concentrate. Maybe we're overwhelmed with everything. So to be able to stop and focus on a task is just near impossible for us. And then for some people, none of these other things might be the red flag for them. And maybe actually when they start developing other health issues, that they really recognize what the toll of being a caregiver is, taken on them. I threw this in here just because, stress impacts people in so many different ways. And for some people, there's physical signs of signs of stress. And for others, there are emotional signs. So I'm just going to run through these quickly just so you can kind of see. I've already mentioned that disturbed sleep, whether it's not being able to fall asleep, or waking up in the middle of the night and not being able to get back to sleep, whatever that may look like for you. It could be, headache, muscle tension. I know I get aches right here in the top, of my back or my lower neck. On my muscle tension. For some people, they lose weight when they're overwhelmed and stressed because they don't eat, and other people may gain weight because they're overwhelmed and they emotionally eat. Some anxiety and things may cause some stomach digestive issues, diarrhea, upset stomach, ulcers, those types of things. Hair loss, fatigue, again, that exhaustion. For some people, it's chest pains or high blood pressure, perspiration, skin disorders, like people can get hives, people clench their teeth and may get jaw pain. Some, just get run down and they have that weakened immune system. So they're more susceptible to other illnesses, especially now as we enter into flu season, as well as with COVID-19. It's really important that we take care of ourselves and we do what we can to keep our immune system strong. As far as emotional signs of stress, again, I mentioned anxiety and depression, but it could also be these mood swings, kind of like out of the blue, that are mood shifts. That could be a sign of stress. Irritability, frustrated. Maybe it's not necessarily here at home with your loved one that we see these signs, but maybe it comes out as road rage when you're out and about, and you find that you have less patience for everyone or situations. I've known people, caregivers. I talk to them all the time on the phone, and they'll say, for some reason, my memory just isn't working as well as it used to be. And the first thing I always say to them is, that's a sign of stress, and that maybe you have a little bit on your plate, too much on your plate. Butterflies in their stomach, again, worrying about what's going to happen next. They feel like they have no longer have control over their life. Increased substance abuse. I've run into caregivers who have started drinking alcohol more than they used to as a way for them to cope. They become more argumentative. They don't really stop and pause to think things through. They become very rigid sometimes. Um, so those are some of the signs of the emotional aspects of stress. And then, some immediate red flags, things to take into consideration that you may need a break, is that short fuse. I know for myself as a mother of twin 5-year-olds, I notice that when I feel overwhelmed and stressed, I'm not as sweet and nice to my children as I would like to do. And I might have a shorter fuse. And when I see that happen, and I know it's time for me to take a break. Emotional outburst where you may just start crying at a drop of a hat for no reason. Again, those sleep issues. I know it's impossible to be nice when I'm tired. I don't know if anyone else feels that way, or that significant weight change, physical ailment, social isolation. And sometimes we're not the best at recognizing what some of our issues are. So we may have to listen, as difficult as it may be, to listen to some of these complaints from our family members. They may see these changes in us. And I always like to say the best thing we can do for our loved one, no matter what chronic health issue that they're coping with, is to take care of ourselves. So if we see these breaks, see any of these signs in ourselves, please know that it's typical, that these are common, and it's really time for us to develop a plan for us to get a break. So other ways that we can, I'm just going to bring all of these up so it's much easier. And if you need some respite, I encourage you to reach out to myself at the Alzheimer's Association to be able to provide you some information and support about local respite services. And I also recommend that you reach out to the Otsego County Office for the Aging to explore some of the funding that may be available to assist with some of the respite. So ways in which we can be a healthier caregiver. So the first thing we want to do, no matter what concern we have or what health issue our loved one may have, the first thing we want to do is seek an early diagnosis. If our loved one's having some symptoms, it's best to speak with our primary care physician in order to make sure that those healthcare issues are being diagnosed and we receive the care that they need. We also want to make sure we take the time to learn about the different community resources that are available and be able to tap into that. So know where we can access support groups or education programs to learn about the disease, to be able to know what agencies are out there to help us to support our loved one in this journey. Become an educated caregiver. You're taking the first step by attending this education program, but also know that, for instance, the Alzheimer's Association have programs specifically designed for caregivers to help them understand dementia, Alzheimer's disease, changes in communication, behavior, helpful holiday hints, all different types of things, as well as the Cancer Society has information to help you become educated, as well as the MS Association. There's a lot of national organizations that specialize in different disorders and health issues, and I encourage you to reach out to whichever one closely aligns with your loved one's health issues, because education really is the key. And then again, I talked a little bit about stress, about respite, but really get some help. Talk with family members and be frank and say, I'm overwhelmed and stressed. And, it would be helpful for me to know what level of support that you'd be able to provide. Instead of waiting for caregivers to offer help or friends and family to offer assistance, some may have already done so, and it's hard to say yes. But if they haven't and you're sitting here waiting, it was hard for me when I was caring for my parents to recognize that my siblings were not mind readers. It was easy for me to get overwhelmed and stressed and say, well, why isn't he doing this? Why isn't he doing that? But at the same time, I never made it clear what I needed. So, as much as that responsibility falls on our loved ones, it's important for us to recognize what we need and to vocalize that to our friends and family. And sometimes that's the number one thing that we need to do, is vocalize what we need to do. Take care of yourself. And again, it's hard to find the time when you're already overwhelmed and stressed. Um, but you have to make the time. You have to carve it out. And taking care of yourself is going to look different for each and every one of us. And for example, I'll use myself. Taking care of me may be getting lost in a book after bedtime, or having a phone call with my best friend to be able to unload and vent. I also exercise, and that's challenging to figure out the time and to do that. But that's an outlet for me. And I know that when I take the time to take care of myself, I know I'm more the mother I would like to be for my children. And I often believe that's the way it is for many caregivers. When we put ourselves first, we have the energy to be able to take care of the ones that we love. Use relaxation techniques. There's some great websites out there that have some information. I know that I utilize some um, meditation and yoga and relaxation, guided relaxation techniques from YouTube that I use often. YouTube, I always tell folks, is a great resource. That's where I get all my fitness exercise regimens from, is YouTube. I go on there and listen to all different types of meditations, and it really does help. And I even used one. If I wake up in the middle of the night, they have these things on YouTube that you can listen to that help put you back to sleep. So there's all kinds of things on there if you have access to that. Make sure that you are checking in with yourself every once in a while so you see where your stress level is. It's much easier if we address the stress sooner than later. Stress is accumulative. And sometimes once that snowball, so to speak, starts rolling down the mountain, it's hard to address some of that stress. But if we can kind of check in with ourselves periodically and kind of head it off and check in and see what we can address and what we do have control over, is often helpful. And with any chronic health issue, it can be challenging. But one thing we can often count on with a progressive disease is change. And as challenging as it may be, but one of the things that I find is that when we try to fight the change or the progression, that often increases our stress levels. So if there's anything that we can do by accepting the changes as they occur, and again, I think becoming educated is one of the keys to that, is to really understand where we're at and what to expect, so that way we're not caught off guard. I also find that for those caregivers who actually take the time in the earlier stages, when their loved one's able to participate, or even as the disease progresses, we make some of those legal and financial plans. Talk with our loved one about their healthcare wishes. We talk to them about who's going to make healthcare decisions on their behalf. We talk to them about, if we're no longer able to live at home together, what are we going to do? And if we can incorporate any of those conversations, with our loved one, often that would alleviate some of the stress as well. If your loved one's unable to participate, you would still alleviate a lot of stress if we can make some plans now. My background's in public relations, so my philosophy on life is to plan for the worst and hope for the best. And I often encourage families, to make all kinds, to have a backup plan, an idea of things that and how we like them to be handled in the future, and then we can file them away, and we don't have to focus on that, and it's one less thing to overwhelm us and stress us. We want to make sure we're giving ourselves credit, and not guilt. Stop and focus on what you have accomplished. I actually sometimes, if I feel overwhelmed and stressed and like, oh my goodness, I'm never going to get all this stuff done, I'll actually sit down and make a list of all the things that I did get accomplished. And that really makes me feel a lot better, is when I recognize that I look at life as like a kaleidoscope. And if we can just turn that picture just a little bit, we'll have a whole different view. And it may make us feel a lot better. So give yourself credit, because chances are you've already gone way above and beyond. And if you're anything like me, you probably put too much on that to-do list to begin with. Make sure that you're visiting your doctor regularly and that you're taking care of yourself. And it's hard to get there, I understand. But if we're putting those things on the back burner, chances are caregiving will start to impact your health. And we need to make sure that we're keeping you in top performance, not only so you can be there for your loved one, but also to make sure you have a good quality of life. And figure out a way to find time for yourself. I know for myself, I wake up extra early so I can get up before the kids. So maybe that's an option for you, is to wake up before them. I know during nap time, or when they would doze off in the afternoon, that's when I would get my exercise in. But whatever it is, try to stop and think. For myself, what I've always done is try to create some type of flow for the day, or routine for my loved ones. So that way I can easily block out time for myself. I know that when I spend time with my little ones and make sure that I think of it as filling their cup, then they can go and engage in other things. And then I'm able to find some time for myself to get lost in a book or whatnot while they go play and get engaged in a different activity. And you might be able to do something similar. For instance, spend some time with your loved one, engage them in some different activities, have them help them exert some energy, which people may, as they age, have difficulty doing, especially if they have a life-limiting illness like Alzheimer's. And then they may doze off, or be able to participate in a quiet activity alone, which may free you up to do some things for yourselves. And if nothing else, I encourage you to get moving. The number one thing that I do for myself to manage my stress is exercise. It really does. It's a great outlet. And it doesn't have to be anything extravagant. Like I said, there are some great options on YouTube. There's a lot of different fitness activities that you can find on there that are geared towards an older population. I'm a certified Tai Chi for balance instructor. And I know when I was practicing and when I was still going through and learning everything, I would go on and watch some videos. So I know there's Tai Chi and yoga for older folks, so many different options on there. I know a lot of different fitness centers are doing Facebook Lives and different things if you're unable to get out and about, or it could just be going for a walk while the weather's still cooperating. Whatever it is to get moving. Also remember that you don't have to do it alone. One of the most heartbreaking things for me in my position is when I meet someone after their loved one has passed, and they never reached out for assistance. They really did everything on their own. But there's a wealth of support out there. Lean on your family and friends, build your support network. And if you're like myself, you don't feel comfortable asking people for help. What I did when I brought the twins home from the hospital and my friends and family would stop by and they would ask if there was anything I needed. I didn't like to ask them. Like, what if I asked my brother to go to the grocery store? Like, that would be weird. He doesn't even like going to the grocery store. So I felt weird asking people for specific things. So one of the things that I did is I took a piece of paper and I left a run-in to-do list on my refrigerator. And when somebody would stop by and ask if there was anything they could do, I would say to them, my to-do list is on the refrigerator. If there's anything on there that you feel like you could help with, that would be great. And then there would be an array of things on there. There was things like pick up diapers or formula from the store. There was a pick up a prescription, pick up a gallon of milk, fold laundry, do dishes, all different types of things on the to-do list. And it really was helpful because when my friends and family stopped by, they were able to pick out what they felt comfortable um, assisting with. So that way I never felt like I put anyone on the spot. We want to check in with faith-based communities. There's a lot of different churches that have groups that visit or make telephone calls. I know and I work in 3 counties, and one of the counties I work with, a family shared with me how they have a faith-based community that will actually drop off meals. So if a caregiver is overwhelmed and stressed, somebody from the church drops off meals a couple times a week. So tap into that. Social service agencies like the Office for the Aging, Catholic Charities here locally, a lot of different agencies have a lot of supports and things that are available at no cost for caregivers that we could usually tap into. Support groups. I know the Alzheimer's Association, we are currently offering all of our support groups over the telephone and a few virtually during COVID. So tap into that because then you're able to connect with other people with similar issues and concerns. I know other national organizations like the Cancer Society, FTD Association, Lewy Body Dementia Association, they all have support groups and a way to support caregivers on this journey. The Alzheimer's Association also has a 24-hour helpline, which I will put in the chat at the end of the program, as well as my personal contact information if anyone is interested in learning more specifically about dementia or Alzheimer's. And then I encourage you to check into respite. As I mentioned, there is some respite funds available to help support caregivers. I know that each of the OFAs have the ISEP, the Extended In-Home Care for the Elderly program that often can help with some support. But I also know that the New York State Department of Health has some grant funds available for caregiver support as well. So that's another thing. And then there are private agencies and all things like that. That's a whole nother program. I have another whole 1-hour program that talks about the levels of care and what's available and to explain that. But there are residential respite as well. So often facilities would recommend or request that families would look or commit to a 2-week residential respite just because of the amount of paperwork and regulations that they have to go through in order to allow for residential respite. But it is an option. And I've known many caregivers to take advantage of that, for weddings and they had to travel out of town or to just needed a break or, it's the holidays and they wanted to get ready, putting up holiday decorations or cleaning out the house or any of those types of things. Just know that that's an option. And the Office for the Aging can help you provide a list of those options as well as the Alzheimer's Association. I'm sure if you're attending this, you're familiar with the Office for the Aging, but we do have, I did put in the link to the state website for all of the different offices for the agents. So maybe you live here in Otsego County. However, you have a family member that lives in a different region. This would help you connect to their Office for the Agent through this website, because I've recognized not all caregivers live in the same county as the person with that they're caring for. And then also there are some free meditations available through Headspace, as well as the New York State Emotional Support Helpline that is right now through COVID. But for now, just know that laughter really is the best medicine. So why? Yes, I'm stressed. Why do you ask? So relax, get much needed sleep. Make sure you take time to dance and exercise. Make sure you get lots of hugs safely, social distancing. And make sure you connect when you can. And as I promised, here is the Alzheimer's Association's toll-free 1-800 number, our website at alz.org. The chapter that I work for is the Northeastern New York chapter of the Alzheimer's Association. We've also included the Family and Caregiver Alliance, where there's some additional information and support, as well as caregiverstress.com. The Alzheimer's Association, as I mentioned, provides a 24-hour helpline. We also offer those free education programs online as well. Currently, all of our programming is happening virtually or over the phone. And we also do provide, I'm going to stop sharing so I can see everyone. The Alzheimer's Association also provides care consultations where we're able to meet with families one-on-one to help them identify community resources, educate them about the disease, and really help them on this journey. I always explain it as we are not case managers, meaning that I do not actively follow up with caregivers. However, I'm your new best friend who's an expert in memory loss and dementia and Alzheimer's, and we're really here to help guide you on this journey. I've been with the association since 2005, and there's families that I've worked with since that day. They call and reach out whenever they need support, and I'm here to help guide them. So, does anyone have any questions? Okay, I'm just gonna, I'm just gonna type in my, my direct line and email address in the chat box. So if anyone would like to reach out to me directly after this call, feel free to do so.
And if you think of any questions after the program ends, you can reach out to Office for the Aging or Ann. We'll help you out.
There we go. Well, thank you very much for your time and attention today, everyone. It's been a pleasure.
All right, and no questions have come in so far, so that will conclude our program for today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, wait.
Oh.
We do have a question. I'm in between as to whether to have my mom go to and then it stops, I'm guessing go to a facility? A facility. She currently lives with this person.
So there is no one answer for that situation. I think those are very individualized.
Her mom is 95.
Mom's 95. Those are very individualized questions. And if you like, I'd be more than happy to chat with me, maybe you one-on-one to address that. But things to consider as far as when is it time for care, feel free to take down my telephone number and email address, and I'd be happy to meet with you. But things to consider is she able, how is it impacting your health? You know, often what I say to caregivers is it's not, we don't want to make sure our loved one has the highest quality of life while we're running ourselves into the ground. So that's something to consider. How is this impacting your health? So that's one thing. Two, I often recommend if people are kind of on that fence and not sure what to do, sometimes trying a residential respite is a good way to give it a try without committing. So maybe you're just tired and overwhelmed, and if you had a 2-week break, you know, maybe we could continue to keep mom at home. Or by trying a 2-week break, we may recognize, wow, you know, it really is taking an impact and stress on me. And sometimes it's easier to transition into a long-term placement after the respite piece. And that kind of gives you a chance to see how mom would adjust to the new environment and see how you feel after the 2-week time period. Other things to consider are her ability, would she be able to qualify for a level of facility? Because just because of her age doesn't necessarily mean she would qualify for a skilled facility. So we'd have to figure out what facility would be appropriate, because just because we think our loved one should go to nursing home doesn't mean that they would qualify. Here in New York State, they have what's referred to as the PRI, or patient review instrument, that really goes through and assesses the individual's ability to perform activities of daily living, like transferring from chairs, being able to walk a certain level or certain amount of or distance, being able to dress independently, use the bathroom independently, all of those things to come into consideration. So that's a thought too, as well as funding sources and options and waiting lists. I mean, there's a lot of things to consider. And again, I'm more than happy to have a one-on-one conversation um, to answer all those concerns and dive deeper into that. Did you have something to add, Alicia? There's so much to say on a comment and a question. There's so many directions.
There's so many questions we ask when you call to talk to us one-on-one about that. As Ann said before, Office for the Aging does have programs available, grant-funded programs for individuals who have Alzheimer's and dementia. We also, those grants come actually from Alzheimer's Association. We also do have caregiver funding available through New York State Office for the Aging for individuals who don't have Alzheimer's or dementia. It matters if they have Medicaid or they don't have Medicaid. There's programs with no matter their income, so we can help no matter what. So it is important to reach out to us and to do it before you're in a crisis. So if you're really not sure what to do and how it's affecting you, before it's a crisis, because nothing in this county, because it's so rural, is immediate.
Right. I always tell families, when you plan ahead, you have more options. When we are working in a crisis mode, there really are limited options.
We look forward to talking to you. Are there any other questions? All right, then we'll conclude the program for today.
Thank you, Alicia.
Thank you.